Good evening, everyone. My name is Julia Joseph, and I welcome you all to Reimagining Healthcare Industry Startup Interface Series, an initiative put together by NATHEALTH, the Healthcare Federation of India, and TiE Mumbai, the Indus Entrepreneurs Mumbai chapter, with IQVIA as knowledge partners and HealthWire as our digital media partners. With an emphasis on co-innovation, the initiative aims to facilitate partnerships between the healthcare industry and the startup ecosystem to fill in gaps in the Indian healthcare system and to safeguard it against future emergencies. As a curtain raiser to this initiative, we have organized this one-day industry startup interaction where both industry and startup leaders will engage in discussion and lay out for us their key expectations from and thoughts on the initiative. Before we start, I would like to make two housekeeping. For our audience, please use the Q&A function on the bar at the bottom of your screen to type in your questions. The moderators will be able to see and address them. Please do mention whom your question is addressed to. For our speakers, Ms. Trupti from TiE Mumbai will be managing the presentations on screen. If you would like slides to be moved around, please address her and say so. It will be done. To start the event, I would like to invite on screen Mr. Amit Mukim, who represents the Innovation Forum at NATHEALTH. He is also the president at TiE Mumbai and managing director at IQVIA South Asia. Please come on screen for the opening remarks and to share a roadmap for this industry startup series initiative.
Thank you, Julia. And a very warm welcome and good evening to all my colleagues, friends, entrepreneurs, industry leaders, government dignitaries who have joined this interface series, which is a proud moment for us, both at NATHEALTH, at TiE, and more importantly, for the healthcare fraternity. What started off as a concept that we spoke about a few years ago is today coming to fruition, where we imagined that we will create a forum and a bridge where innovation that is happening in India will be supported by the leadership of the healthcare fraternity, as well as get the support from the government and the regulator. And this is the series that we are launching to initiate and encourage such dialogue. I'm very grateful today to the startups who have taken out time for this discussion. We have carefully chosen the first set of entrepreneurs who will present their offerings to you, and with the expectation that it will lead to a partnership between the industry as well as benefit the ecosystem at large. I would request Trupti to please put up my presentation that I wanted to share with this group. Yeah, can you go to the next slide? Just briefly introducing my organization. I represent IQVIA for South Asia. We're a global Fortune 500 organization. We work in the area of human data science with 70,000 plus people, healthcare practitioners, data scientists, technology experts across 100 plus countries. And India is a huge base for such capability that we have across the country. We service close to 8,000 customers across HCPs, the MedTech fraternity, public health, and consumer health. Next slide, please. We all know some of these, but when you put these numbers together on one page, these statistics tell us a story that is deeply encouraging. A little under $1 trillion is the union budget allocation in healthcare. 642 billion is the union budget allocation to make the Swasth Bharat Yojana Atmanirbhar. $250 billion is the additional funding that we have for improving health infrastructure. This year has seen an upsurge, not only across the world, but in India as well, where a little under 5 billion of FDI has flowed into the traditional healthcare sector. The National Digital Health Mission has laid out another 1.5 billion as part of its rollout. And there is billion plus state level budget investments in infrastructure in healthcare. What was there a few years ago is now unfolding. And I believe that we are at an inflection point and a hockey stick where not only the pandemic, but the entire fraternity of innovation, entrepreneurship, and startups has accelerated the spotlight on healthcare. And hence, this is a very opportune time to actually step up and support how we drive this innovation forward. Next slide, please. When we look at the story across the infrastructure today, it is still a big skew. The breakdown between the urban and the rural areas, the split between what is needed to spend on medical infrastructure is just so humongous that if we do not look at technology and at disruptive ways to bridge that gap, it is like laying down tracks for a speeding train. The good news is, of course, that not only do we have innovation that is coming in from the private sector, but we have the National Digital Health Mission, all of you know about, which is going live across the country. And we have regulatory support for fast track implementation of such initiatives. What has helped tremendously is the upsurge in the digital adoption by providers. And I was reading a recent article that came last week that the data usage in rural areas has gone up almost by 300%, which says today that the ability for us to improve access driven by technology is much more real than it was before. In addition to this, we've seen a lot more unicorns being born out of India, and many of them are healthcare unicorns, which is very encouraging for the startup fraternity. And we've seen investments by large corporate houses and industries which traditionally were not into healthcare. So the best practices of some of these industrial houses are now available in healthcare, which will catapult this industry forward. Next slide, please. The one big change in terms of the shift that is happening, which we hope will revolutionize and build maturity in the Indian healthcare landscape, is the National Digital Health Mission. Not only will it create a unified health interface through the APIs for health services, which is telemedicine, lab medicine, other health services APIs, but we also believe that there will be a big push towards creating a seamless data exchange, which is so important to drive healthcare across the segment and create continuous pathways that are missing in India today. The India Stack, which is a generic building block. And then we have the entire ecosystem of consumer apps and portals that have been designed by the government, as well as digital health players that will plug into this ecosystem. And some of the startups that you will meet today are already working with a line of sight into how they could plug into this overall architecture. Next slide, please. And this will be impact will help on digitization of health data. Today, what we do need is a citizen-centric and a consent-based health system. And if we do not have an architecture that encourages this, we will never be able to build this dream. It will build transparency in information, and it will build a model where data could be shared seamlessly, safely, and in a transparent way across the ecosystem. And when we look at all of the stakeholders of ecosystem, the benefits are huge. What is important today is that forums like TiE and NATHEALTH need to play a role in bringing all of these stakeholders of the ecosystem together. Think through what some of the problems are, because many of them are problems that are connected. Next slide, please. A little bit about TiE Mumbai. TiE is a nonprofit which was set up in the Valley. We are present across 60 countries. Mumbai is one of the 4 running chapters in India. TiE mentors and sets up startups, first-time entrepreneurs, incubators, as well as startups that are looking for co-founders to scale up. The entire ethos of TiE is to foster entrepreneurship. We have more than 10,000 startups that we have mentored. Many of them have gone and become large unicorns in the world. And we have close to 15,000 members who actually take advantage of all of the material that we share with them regarding building their career and their future in entrepreneurship. Next slide, please. And of course, Harsh, who is the president of NATHEALTH and who will speak after me, will talk more. But from an innovation perspective, I think one of the things that NATHEALTH brings to the table is the ecosystem of high quality providers, medical device companies, insurance players, life sciences companies, thought leadership regarding several areas that are going to change the ecosystem, right from public health to private health and digital health. And in NATHEALTH, 2 years ago, we created this forum for innovation, where the thought process was that we will build an ecosystem along with different academia, associations and institutions like TiE, bring in mentors from the industry, from the government, and provide a forum for innovators, entrepreneurs, and startups to actually connect with this ecosystem and mutually benefit. So NATHEALTH in this way is a catalyst for innovation. And this is the first of the interface series that we are doing today. Next slide, please. And with this, I would again welcome all of you to this forum. I wish these startups the very best in a great conversation with the industry. And I'm hoping that there'll be a positive outcome for everyone in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amit, for that insightful presentation and taking us through the way forward for this initiative. I would now like to request Dr. Harsh Mahajan, President of NATHEALTH and Founder and Chief Radiologist at Mahajan Imaging, to come on screen for the welcome address.
Thank you very much, Julia. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to welcome all of you today for Reimagining Healthcare, an initiative which is an industry startup interface, a series which is being jointly presented to you by NATHEALTH and TiE Mumbai. I would like to especially welcome the entire TiE community and the many startups who have joined us. NATHEALTH, Healthcare Federation of India, encompasses the healthcare ecosystem and is pleased to facilitate this interaction between innovators and industry. And I'm sure through this partnership, there would be many new unicorns that hopefully will be born. Today's program marks a series which will aim to foster co-innovation through meaningful partnership between the healthcare industry represented by NATHEALTH and the healthcare startup community. As the pandemic has reinforced, there are many infrastructural and skill gaps that need to be addressed in our healthcare system. Some of the gaps we all noticed included the lack of capacity and the inefficiency in management. Even where the capacity was there, it could not be utilized optimally. To ensure that these gaps do not hamper our efforts against future waves or pandemics, we need to increase the pace at which we are innovating, the solutions that we need, as well as improve the accessibility of these innovations. Partnerships between startups that have access to cutting-edge knowledge and technology, and industry members that have clinical experience, customer support, financial security, will help provide pathways to scale for innovation. And only with scale, especially in India, can the process of innovation be sustainable, and can it prove to be beneficial to a larger base of people. Creating a transparent interface between the industry and the startup community is crucial, both to facilitate and mediate the conversation. NATHEALTH, with its Industry Connect, policy influence, in partnership with TiE Mumbai, who have tremendous experience in designing and executing open innovation programs, are really if you ask me, the perfect facilitators. I'm keenly looking forward to the future of this initiative in terms of helping facilitate partnerships that lead to the development and success of path-breaking innovations in Indian healthcare. Before I end, I would like to extend a warm welcome to so many people who have made this initiative possible, especially Mr. Deepak Bagla, a very dear friend of mine, who's the Managing Director and CEO of Invest India. Thank you, Deepak, for joining today and for making this possible. And we will continue to look at you, your organization, to help the startup ecosystem in not only financial, but even technological help that they may need in the future. Mr. Ajay Agarwal, Director, Ayushman Bharat, Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, better known as NHA. Thank you very much, sir, for joining in today. And we assure you that along with you, we will help in development of innovations which will make Ayushman Bharat, which is most necessary for our country, a resounding success. Mr. Amit Mukim, whom you heard just now, Managing Director at IQVIA South Asia, President of TiE Mumbai, and of the Innovation Forum of NATHEALTH. Amit, thank you very much for making this a reality and for the passion that you bring to this innovative forum. Mr. Harshad Reddy, a youngster, again, very passionate, very devoted, very sincere, who's the Director Operations at the Apollo Proton Cancer Center and also part of the Innovation Forum of NatHealth. Dr. Om Manchanda, Managing Director at Dr. Lal Path Labs, who's also always willing to spend time to show the way. And we all know how he, along with Dr. Arvind Lal, have transformed Dr. Lal Path Labs into a household word that we know today. Ms. Meenakshi Nivatia, Managing Director at Stryker India Private Limited, Dr. Vidur Mahajan, Head of Research and Development at Caring, who's also part of the Innovation Forum of NatHealth, Mr. Naveen Raju, Executive Director at TiE Mumbai, and Mr. Anurag Saxena, Principal and Head of Digital Health Consulting and Solutions, South Asia at IQVIA. And of course, I would be failing in my duty if I did not recognize the efforts put in by the NatHealth Secretariat, Mr. Siddharth and his team, who have gone out of their way to start this. This is only the first step in a series which we hope will help young innovators bring their innovations into day-to-day clinical practice, because that is what we are all here for, the patient, who should benefit from all that we do. Thank you very much. I wish this first series a huge success. Over to you, Julia.
Thank you, Dr. Mahajan, for those kind and inspiring words and for being one of the leading voices for the healthcare industry in India. As a chief guest today, we have with us Mr. Deepak Bagla, Managing Director and CEO of Invest India, National Investment Promotion and Facilitation Agency. I would like to invite Mr. Bagla to come on screen and address those who have joined us today.
Thank you, Julia. Hi, Harsh. I was listening to you and I must compliment you and NatHealth and TiE. And there's a reason why I want to do that. The reason is it is one of the most topical things which you're doing. And I think this partnership is very, very critical. And I'll speak a little about that. But before that, I think we must thank Mr. Bhattacharya, Naveen, obviously we've spoken, Dr. Agarwal, Ishika, Mr. Reddy, Dr. Manchanda, Ms. Nivetya, Dr. Vidur Mahajan, Actually, Vidur, I must compliment you. Earlier this week, we had a delegation from the US, some medical devices people and some startups, and they were speaking very highly of what you're doing. So compliments to you and thank you for keeping India on the map there. And Naveen and Anurag and all of you, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity and inviting us. I thought what I'll do with this, I'll share with you what we at Invest India are going through and experiencing vis-a-vis the sector which we are discussing today. And I'll just share some numbers with you. But before that, I must tell you, in many ways, I compliment all of you who are a part of this sector. But in many other ways, I want to wish you the best of luck on it because it's not going to be the easiest. This is probably going to be one of the most disrupted sectors during the course of the next 5 years to a decade. And when you mean of disruption, so if you're not willing to do that change and if you're not willing to do the somersault and pivot your business models, you lose out on a large part of the wave which is taking this forward. And when I talk about a wave, let me tell you, when we were doing the market sizing it within my team, so we have a special dedicated team which is working on pharmaceuticals, another one on medical devices, and another one on health per se. Many of you have been working with that team, and obviously a completely separate team which works on the startup side of it and the disruptional side of it. But let's go back, and these are statistics you are all aware of. But when we were doing the market sizing just 24 months ago, there was a number of about 200 to 220 billion of that entire sector, and everybody said that's a big number. Well, let's see what has happened. Within 12 to 14 months, that 220 billion has moved to 280 billion. And everybody kept clicking their tongues and saying that's a big number. And now, within the next 20 months, what you're looking at, that number moving to 372 billion. And I'm very sure in the next 3 months, it's going to be recalibrated completely again. So what you are sitting in the midst of, and that is for all the startups, there are no slides to be shared. Piyush, you were asking me that question. If it's for me, there are none. I'll just share some thoughts. What is very interesting here is you are riding this wave. In many ways, this wave is going to take you for another 4 to 7 years. And it is what you make of this wave, each one of you who are stakeholders in it, which will define the next phase of your businesses, of your careers, and all your lives. Let me just share with some numbers for you. So, you know, the team currently, my team, is working on 818 business requests related to pharmaceuticals. Top 5 countries, you know, I mean, we all know about it. There's US, UK, China, UAE. But what's interesting, when I look at pharmaceuticals, medical devices, and health, in the past 24 months, I have business requests from over 86 countries. 86 countries looking either for partnerships or wanting to invest in India or wanting to start their business in India. So going back to numbers, pharmaceuticals, 818 business requests, which the team is dealing with. Medical devices, 653. And health per se, 889. The other interesting element, if you look at it, if I drew the pie chart about 4 years ago, you would have always had the same old names. On the state side, you'll have a Delhi, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and you would have had Maharashtra. That pie is increasing dramatically. Today, I'm seeing an interest across 29 states and union territories already. And what is happening there is that we are working very closely and all these clusters which are there across the country and creating a very quick plug and play business model because a large number of MSMEs are looking at this sector and they are coming from across the globe. I mentioned to you 86 countries, but if I have to look at it, I'm seeing interest coming in from Japan very significantly, from Europe, from Taiwan, interestingly, in medical devices, from Korea again, and obviously the good old, you have the UK, the UAE. The UAE being a lot of financial investors, and I'm seeing that coming up from other countries too. So what I'm saying is, one, the number of countries from where I'm seeing the interest has broad-based immensely. And secondly, where that interest is targeted at in my states has broad-based immensely again. Now let me share some other thoughts with you. One of my roles is, so we have a startup fund of funds, you all know about it, the 10,000 crore fund, where we are funding other funds, which are only going to be funding startups. And in the past 9 months, I'm seeing each of these funds, when they are coming in, every one of them is looking at medicine and health as a center pillar of their strategy. And they're getting huge amounts of money. And by the way, what's interesting is I'm seeing that a large number of these funds have women as a part, either on their IC or their promoters or a GP. So a large level of gender participation is coming across in that part also. I liked Amit's presentation. I think it gave us a very broad spectrum of what is happening. And what I liked in that specifically was his showing of how innovation, startup, and this industry have to work together to see how the road ahead is going to be built. And that takes me back to my point that how fast can you adopt the change and how fast can you adapt to that change is going to define the success of all of you, because you are sitting on the brink of the ability of being global leaders in the segment you are. The reason is you've got the local numbers which get you the scale and the economies of scale. And you have the innovation, the frugality of your innovation, the applicability of your innovation, and your ability to be nimble and pivot your business models to make yourself global leaders. We've seen that on how you did your PPEs and your ventilators. The other two elements which are coming, and I'm seeing a large level of investment coming in that. And this one, the next one is both from the public side, which is the government, and also on the private side, is it on the digitization. And the reason why I speak about digitization, I don't need to mention it. You're all there. You are the masters of this craft. You know how it is going to impact your businesses very critically. But yes, that is now going to be a very significant driving force where your industry is concerned. The other element where I'm seeing a very significant interest of global interest, and that is wellness and Ayush. You know, you'll be surprised that during the past 12 months, we have seen multifold, I mean, some products going, the exports increasing by over 800%. Some of these Ayush, Ayurvedic products, and a lot of them going to Europe and the US and such countries. And one of the interesting things we saw that this is an increasing trend both in the US, and I know some of you may not always see the fit with it, but I think if there is a bridge which can be created, there's always something to look forward to. The old forms of medication, not just from India, but from other countries, have taken off extensively, even on the Western coast of the US. And we are trying to put our arms around it and seeing how wellness, which is now going to be a big source of money and investment coming in, how India can play a role in it. And I'm looking at you guys doing the same. And what is also happening, let me tell you, some of the public sector units in India, which have additional land at their disposal in their plants and are very well located, are actually looking very actively to partner globally to create tourism medical facilities. So medical tourism is now picking up in a big way. But the very interesting thing is you have entities, because this is a very quick model to take off. The land is there, all the clearances are there. You'll obviously have a community there with skilled manpower. And I'm going to come to the skilled manpower because that is going to be something which is very, very important. So those kind of things are already in play. This is in addition to how we can upgrade some of the clusters. And I would like all of you to please be with us or suggest to us what else we can do, pick up those locations and see how we can do it. And especially the startups and everybody there. And you know, you've got TiE and we've been working very closely with them. The state level initiatives are taking huge prominence in this one also. We've got a number of states which have now reached out to us proactively and which are now marking parcels of land available where they can put up either skill centers, because that is now another very big area. And I'm also seeing that in a number of the venture capital funds which are coming to us for funding on that mother fund of funds. They are looking at skilling in a very big way in this entire effort. So that is the other one. I know I've already moved beyond my 10 minutes, which has been allotted to me. But let me just tell you quickly, when I spoke to you about those number of business requests, one of the biggest sectors there is e-pharmacy. And then I'm seeing e-diagnostics, teleconsultations as one of the fastest growing there. artificial intelligence in healthcare is taking off in a big way, including virtual reality. Robotics and 3D printing, we all know about. We've seen how robotics helped us even in places like Jharkhand and small hospitals there. And data analytics and aided diagnostics. I mean, I'm not saying there are other sectors, but these are some of the ones which are really being pushed very aggressively, which have been coming to us. So what am I coming to eventually? You are the disruptors. You are the executioners. I don't think you sit in a sweet spot. And why I say you sit in a sweet spot, because you're in a spot today where finances will never be a constraint, at least for the next few years. But the challenge for you is to ramp up really fast. You're not the only ones on the planet who are being able to do it. It's just that today you are in a position where you can. My suggestion, go back to your business models. Ramp up on multiple X's, not just a 2X or a 3X. There is a large, and we are also I'm seeing some very interesting proposals on people giving complete healthcare per person at one of the lowest costs in the world. And there's a project which is happening in one of the state governments close to Delhi, where they're picking up an X number of people in an X number of villages on that project to be run, to speak about. That again is going to be a huge disruptional model because those amounts are very insignificant. And the moment you can see that healthcare going down to the real tranches where the country requires them, where all that is happening, it's very, very interesting. So with that, I thank you once again for doing this. I think this partnership is very, very critical. I must tell you that Startup India is also, Invest India is responsible for the execution of Startup India. But the other interesting element of this is that the Prime Minister's Science and Technology Initiative, which is the accelerated growth of New India innovation, where we are picking up R&D and innovation, which is happening across the private and the government sector and in academic institutions, and fast tracking it to commercialization. Where in the past, during the pandemic itself, setting up those emergency hospitals, getting ventilators done, and actually working with all of you to see what else can be done, is happening at a very fast rate. So I think this partnership makes immense sense. You're in the center of it. We are there to support you and facilitate you in any which way. Now it's just for you and your initiative to take it on. Thank you again, and let me thank Harsh. As always, you're always up to interesting things. Thank you for inviting me. This is really exciting, this initiative. And I wish you the best. And please remember, we are there to help you every which way on every step you take. Thank you again. Bye-bye. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you, Mr. Bagla, for your thoughtful insights and suggestions and for ensuring us your support in this initiative. With this, I'd like to now introduce Ms. Ishika Arora, who has been interning with NATHEALTH's Innovation Forum for the last 2 months and has been spearheading the initiative to give it this shape. Ishika is an undergraduate economics student at Pomona College in the US. She will be giving us a brief overview of her research project and how it relates to our event today.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ishika, and I am going to be giving you a brief overview of the research project that I conducted while interning with NATHEALTH's Innovation Forum for the last 2 months. I'd request Trupti to please, thank you. Next slide. So as we all know, the pandemic highlighted how our system is struggling with access, quality, and keeping that problem statement in mind, the research question behind my project is as follows. Is there potential for collaboration between the healthcare industry and the startup ecosystem to leverage co-innovation in order to be able to address some of the gaps that we are seeing in our healthcare system? Next slide, please. To help answer this question, I conducted informational interviews of around 15 NatHealth members, including leading hospitals, diagnostic labs, and medtech companies, to try and understand what their objectives and expectations from such partnerships would be. I also spoke to some startup incubators to understand the perspective of startups and what they hope to gain from these kind of partnerships. Next slide, please. Moving on to my findings and analysis. Next slide, please. So coming to the industry's expectations from such partnerships, their main aim is to leverage co-innovation in order to address their patients' needs. Now, through my research, 4 key areas emerged where the industry is looking to collaborate with startups to develop solutions. The first one is remote patient monitoring solutions. And these are basically solutions that could allow you to set up an eICU or maybe Internet of Things devices that allow patients to monitor their health statistics at home, then safely secure those statistics, and then even transmit them to the doctors directly. The second key area that emerged was point of care diagnostics. And again, this reflects the trend of health at home. So point of care diagnostics through cost-effective devices like smartphones, finger pricks, wearables. This was also another key theme. The third theme that emerged was digitization and operational efficiency. Digitization could include digitizing old medical records, digitizing prescriptions in real time, automation of testing related data according to government mandated formats in order to save time, and also digitizing manual work of healthcare workers. So for example, you have nurses who have to take rounds to measure vitals. How can that be digitized in order to reduce the burden on them and in order to enable them to serve a larger number of patients? The fourth key theme that emerged was employee training and welfare. If you can see on the charts on the right, the main theme for medtech companies was remote patient monitoring solutions. For hospitals, it was digitization and operational efficiency, basically anything that would allow them to increase the capacity. And for diagnostic labs, it was point of care diagnostic solutions. Next slide, please. Okay, coming to the main criteria by which the industry would like to evaluate its startups and their product. Firstly, credibility. Is there any impact data that has been published on the usefulness of the product? Are there any client references? Then the innovation quotient. Compared to existing products, is the price lower? Is the speed faster? Is the outcome better? Is it allowing you to serve a larger number of patients with the same resources? What is the innovative quotient? Third comes scalability, which is also obviously very important. And one of the key things here is how convenient is it to integrate the solution into existing systems? And then lastly, sustainability. Industry members are not necessarily looking for solutions whose relevance depend on temporary patient behavior. So for example, patients' hesitancy to currently come to the hospital to visit doctors, that might not remain after the pandemic. So how do you create solutions that are sustainable post-COVID as well? And lastly, in terms of the industry's expectations, how are they willing to engage with startups? Well, they're willing to partner to develop services, willing to partner to develop products. And an interesting example over here is you have an industry member sharing under the right rules and regulations its medical data with startups who can help create an artificial intelligence ecosystem that can be used for predictive analysis. Another way the industry is willing to engage with startups is to provide a testing or pilot ground. So you could have a startup that is allowed to test its point of care diagnostics and compare its results with regular testing. And lastly, helping startups through their clinical trial process. Next slide, please. Okay, coming now to the startup side of things and their expectations. A quick scan of the startup ecosystem through some secondary research would easily show you that there exists a significant number of startups developing products relevant to the needs of the industry. However, the problem is that only a minute percentage of them actually achieve the growth and scale they need to keep their business sustainable. And hence, we have startups expecting certain benefits that they can gain by engaging with the industry. For early stage startups, it is a co-creation opportunity, an opportunity to develop a product customized to the needs of the industry. For late stage startups, it is an opportunity to deploy their product, to deploy it through funding or piloting opportunities. Next slide, please. So as we can see, collaboration between startups and industry members can help startups address their growth dilemmas. It can also help industry members better address their patients' needs through faster and higher quality innovation. However, the question arises, why do we not see as many partnerships as we would expect? There are certain barriers to collaboration. Firstly, communication barriers. Many times startups aren't able to have access to or get connect to the top decision makers of healthcare companies or their CEOs. Second, startups also feel hesitant to partner with healthcare companies when they fear that there is an absence of a full-time commitment from the company to promoting and supporting innovation. And lastly, a lack of a credible facilitator or a mediator to negotiate the conversation, to overcome the communication barriers, and to also demonstrate commitment for both sides. Next slide, please. Relating this to our event today, how can NATHEALTH and TiE Mumbai help overcome some of these barriers that we discussed? They can create a forum or an interface that leverages their respective strengths and helps us overcome those barriers. NATHEALTH's key strength is obviously its Industry Connect. It has 150 members from the healthcare industry, which startups would love to leverage. We also have TiE Mumbai, whose strength and experience in building open innovation programs for corporates can be used to demonstrate commitment to both sides and facilitate partnerships. Together, this forum can help scan and filter the external startup environment and filter startups based on the needs of the industry and enable and facilitate partnerships and make them easier. Next slide, please. So in short, the Reimagining Healthcare Industry Startup Interface series is trying to be that interface that can facilitate the conversation between both sides and make it easier for them to build meaningful partnerships and co-develop products that can help address some of the gaps in our healthcare system. Thank you, and over to you, Julia.
Thank you, Ishika, for sharing with us these remarkable insights and for leading this initiative. I'm sure both the industry and the startups have a lot to take away from this. With this context in mind, we will move on to our first panel of the day, What the Industry Expects. I would like to invite our moderator for this session, Mr. Anurag Saxena, Principal and Head of Digital Health Consulting and Solutions at IQVIA South Asia, to take the screen.
Thank you, Julia. So we can move to the next slide, please. Great. So thank you. Thanks a lot for the kind introduction. Let me just quickly thank the NATHEALTH team and TiE team for giving me the opportunity to moderate this session. It is indeed an honor and a privilege to be moderating this discussion today. We have a very power-packed panel consisting of leaders from healthcare provider industry, diagnostic industry, and medtech industry. So let me just quickly introduce the esteemed panelists. So we have Mr. Harshad Reddy, who is the Director of Operations at Apollo Proton Cancer Care Hospital. Apollo Proton is Southeast Asia's first proton therapy center and a 150-bed integrated cancer hospital that provides affordable and revolutionary radiation oncology and surgical treatments. Harshad has provided leadership oversight for setting up of APCC, right from the project conceptualization stage to construction to PMO. He has also led the go-to-market planning, operational planning, and recruitment of key personnel for the unit. Apart from this role, he has also been a director at Apollo Home Care that supports over 70,000 families annually with a better home care facility and best-in-class patient support. Moving forward, let me take the opportunity of introducing Dr. Om Manchanda. Dr. Manchanda needs no introduction, but let me, for the benefit of the group, let me quickly introduce that Dr. Manchanda has been instrumental in setting up Lal Path Labs in the last 16 years, and he has successfully scaled it up from a small business, personally run and India's largest medical diagnostics company today. Dr. Manchanda also successfully led the IPO of the company in 2015, and which was the first company to be listed in diagnostic space in India. Dr. Manchanda's career spans over 3 decades, and he has worked in various industries, including FMCG, agri imports, consumer healthcare, and he has also spent about a decade with Hindustan Unilever. Dr. Manchanda won the EY Entrepreneur of the Award in 2019 in Healthcare and Life Sciences category. Recently also received the Healthcare Personality of the Year 2020 award in the FICCI Healthcare Excellence Awards in September 2020. Moving forward, let me introduce Ms. Meenakshi Nevatia. Meenakshi is the Managing Director of Striker India, and she has been playing this role since 2018. In this period, she has focused on transforming the organization into a truly consumer-focused company, while significantly strengthening the operational basics and building a vibrant organization culture. Prior to joining Striker, Meenakshi has spent about 15 years with Novartis Pharma, where she held various leadership positions across several geographies. Meenakshi is also on the board of Medical Technology Association of India, the Governing Council of NATHEALTH, and she is also the chair of MedTech Committee at American Chamber of Commerce. Moving forward, we also have Dr. Vidur Mahajan, who is Head of Research and Development at Caring, and he's also an Associate Director at Mahajan Imaging. Dr. Mahajan has been running Caring, the Center of Advanced Research on Imaging, Neuroscience and Genomics, which works with more than 30 research groups across the world and aims to bring cutting-edge products in artificial intelligence into clinical practice. Dr. Mahajan has also been playing the role of running Mahajan Imaging, which is one of the leading medical imaging providers in India, and Caring DX, which is an advanced molecular diagnostic lab. With this, let me kick off the discussion, and probably I'll ask one question to each of the panelists. And let me go with ladies first, right? So Meenakshi, I would like to ask you and the other panelists on what are some of the emerging areas where the startups could collaborate and support some of the initiatives that you're doing. And maybe if you can talk about some of the initiatives that are being taken by your organization to engage more closely with the startups, that would be really helpful for the group that we have here. Meenakshi.
Anurag, thanks for the question, and good evening, everybody. Firstly, congratulations to NatHealth and TiE for hosting this event. I think it's a perfect opportunity, perfect timing, because both the industry as well as startups are struggling with how to really work with each other and maximize the potential. So really appreciate the time. So to come to your question, Anurag, I think maybe I'll address it in two ways. The first was, what are those emerging needs? And I think the team so far, people who've spoken covered it well, but I see it in 3 to 4 buckets, at least from a Stryker perspective. Stryker is a medical technology company, one of the large ones, and in addition to our commercial operations here, we also have one of our biggest R&D centers. And what we see, the 3 or 4 areas emerging, I think the most obvious one is the patient interface, where of course already startups are playing quite a big role in helping us interact with patients in a much more faster and kind of agile way than ever before. I think the second that I'm beginning to hear, especially with some of the hospitals that we are working with, not necessarily the big corporate chains, but the individual owner-managed hospitals, is the interaction between the hospital and the patient, because the patient comes to the hospital, goes, and often there's no system of a follow-through, particularly for the smaller hospitals. So how to keep that engagement going, how to ensure the patient is keeping well and coming back at the right time for checkups. I think that piece is another critical one, which corporate hospitals can do themselves, but the smaller ones are really relying on some startup type opportunities to really help there. The third one I find, which has been, which I think COVID was like a wake-up call, was really the information tracking. And what I mean by that is, of course, we all tapped into all kinds of information to understand where to get oxygen, where to get beds, where to get medicines. But when we talk to our patients, we work in the area of orthopedics, in the area of cancer, in the area of gastro. Often patients do not know what technology is available where. They do not know, where to go for different type of surgeries. They do not know what is the most leading technology. I mean, they don't have all the information at their fingertips. So how can we have some kind of a system that patients could really identify where to go to for what, because they're really struggling at this point. So, I mean, I can keep on with this list. I'm sure there are many other areas my colleagues will highlight, but actually across our business system, there are plenty of opportunities where we as companies can really work with startups. And to your second question, in terms of what are we doing, as I said, our R&D center is almost 1,300 people. And what we are beginning to do is set up a specific new product division within that is starting to reach out to startups, but in an ad hoc way, I must admit. When we find out something, we reach out to try and see whether there's partnership opportunities. And in addition, we've just recently started, still informal, I'd say, but at least started some kind of a collaboration with IIT Kanpur to start tapping into some ideas that, we can test, we can scale up, as Ishika said, either co-create or develop, whichever one makes sense. So we are still just starting out, a lot more work to be done, but the opportunity is huge.
Thank you, Meenakshi. Let me ask Harshad now if he can share his thoughts on what are some of these areas where he feels startups could collaborate, and maybe talk about some of the work that he is planning to do with startups. Harshad?
Thank you, Anurag. Thank you, Anurag. It's a pleasure to be on this panel. Firstly, I'd like to say, the timing is right. We're in a very important stage in healthcare service delivery. COVID has been a catalyst to it, I would say, as well. The needs of our customers are changing, and we all do believe that they deserve the best. And we are not in this alone, and we would have to work with all the stakeholders involved to be able to deliver what our customer needs. Stating that, the Apollo Group has always been very receptive to new ideas and worked with several new initiatives and with startups. Few areas of interest for us, which Ishika did already mention, would be new ways for point of care testing and diagnostics. We're seeing that our customers are demanding this. I've realized this with my exposure in the home care services as well, and I think it's an exciting space to be in. And we do believe that this is going to be the new frontier of diagnostics, and we would be happy to work with startups in this area. Cost-effective genetic testing is something that we believe is an area that startups can look at. I know some entities are doing it in India, but being exposed to oncology, I'm seeing that the need is huge and affordability is a big issue. And we'd be very happy to explore with anyone thinking on those lines. Augmented reality, virtualization and augmented reality is another area as well. We believe, the education for medical education as well as counseling of our patients and certain procedures could be visualized using these technologies. And this is an exciting area. And I would urge anyone looking at it to give it a serious thought. Stating all of that, I don't have an exhaustive list in front of me, but would always
I think we seem to have lost Harsha's audio. So let me switch over to Dr. Manchanda. Dr. Manchanda, if you can just talk about some of the work that you feel can be done with startups, and is there any specific initiatives being planned by you that will really help the audience?
Yeah, thanks, Anurag. I just want to check whether I'm audible because I'm actually outside on the road right now. Am I clear?
Yes, you can. We can see you also.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, thanks. So I think as I was preparing for this session on the way, I actually just thought I'll probably highlight a few areas where startups have big role to play to help establish traditional players. And my list actually goes up to about 8 points, and I will probably run through those 8 points. I think number one is a lot of healthcare players are sitting on tons of data. It's become fashionable to talk about data science and AI, machine learning, and all that. And I'll be honest that most of them actually don't know how to deal with this whole thing. They have data, much of it is not a readable format, it's disorganized. While they have all the information which is required to be filled up, but I'm afraid that it's in a proper shape and form which actually can be used. And I think startup ecosystem actually can work with many of us to help us clean up the whole stuff. And then obviously that's the first stage. Next is of course doing deep analysis on that. But I think to my mind, startup has big opportunity of working with many of us to clean up our databases. The number two is patient behavior. Of course, the whole world consumer behavior is seeing a big change, and so is in healthcare. Patient behavior has changed quite a bit, and some of us do feel that once the COVID settles down, there may be some of it may come back to the normal part, but I do believe that post-COVID landscape is definitely going to be very different than pre-COVID. In that patient behavior, I think one of the things that we are observing is that the interface with patient is no more now patient walking into any of our facility. They want to access, consume healthcare sitting at home, office, or on the go. So technically, it's technology which is going to be consumer facing on mobile, smartphones. I think that's another area where startups can work and help existing players because some of us actually lack ability to really and adopt some of these technologies. We know that it's required, but we still need startup ecosystem because legacy systems will find it difficult to transition in a manner, in a rapid way, which is probably need of the hour. The third area which I find very interesting is that healthcare is a very fragmented business, and you don't have large scale players, but you have single unit uh, infrastructure. Let's say you have one nursing home, you have one lab, you have one diagnostic center, but you don't have chains of diagnostic centers. And unfortunately, when you have a single unit, you are actually trying to do everything to every customer. I do believe going forward, this is going to get fragmented. The value chain will get fragmented, which essentially means, to give you an example, like let's say pathology, you have a collection as one area, you have logistics another area, and third is the testing as another area, and reporting as a fourth area. Now, I think many players in the past might be used to do everything from end to end. I do believe that this fragmentation will happen going forward. I think startups actually can pick one area and start to excel in that. The fourth I find is integrated ecosystem, which I think the earlier speaker talked about. There's a full stack model which is emerging where all healthcare facilities, services are coming under one roof. And we see some of these large players like pharmacy, etc., trying to build ecosystems, which is full stack model. Clearly, startup ecosystem can help some players who really want to go in that direction. The fifth one is productivity enhancement. I think this is a big one. I do believe that healthcare operates in a very inefficient manner. And that's one of the reasons why you see large players actually becoming larger, because they can operate on a much higher level of efficiency. So technology can help enhance productivity. This morning we had another CI session where I had somebody who was talking about teleradiology, how it has really helped productivity enhancement. The sixth area that I have is on accuracy. Now, we have, let's take example of pathology. We have a lot of machines, analyzers, we do a lot of chemical analysis, etc. But I think clubbed with data science, you can further take the level of clinical excellence to a different level. So again, startup ecosystem can help. The seventh area is remote access. I think our country needs this more than anyone else, because bottom of the pyramid, tier 2, tier 3 towns don't have access to quality healthcare. Whether it's telemedicine, whether it's teleradiology, telepathology, everything actually can converge to provide remote access. I think the last one that I want to talk about is the research and policy making in the area of public health. And I think we have seen that in the recent past, whether it's a COVID app, RT-PCR app, or Arogya Setu, a lot of this actually has come together and helped us map COVID infection on real-time basis. I think COVID may just be a trigger. There are a lot of other areas like tuberculosis or hepatitis, many public health diseases where I think this whole integrated setup, data flow happening from private, public, and all together on real-time basis at a central level can be big one. And I think there's National Digital Health Mission, which is doing a great job. And I see a great opportunity for our country to utilize some of these technologies. So all in all put together, there is a new business model which is likely to emerge in healthcare post-COVID. A combination of all this or some of it, startup ecosystem can help, because some of the traditional players might find themselves little handicapped on going forward. I think those are the points I wanted to make. Over to you, Anurag.
Thank you. I think that was very insightful, Dr. Machanda. Let me come to Vidur now. Vidur, you have been doing much cutting edge work on artificial intelligence and a lot of emerging technology recently. It would be great if you can share your insights around what are the areas where you see startups could collaborate, and maybe talk about some of the initiatives where you are working with some of the startups already.
Sure. No, at the outset, thank you so much, NatHealth, for having me here. And, it's especially proud moment for Harshad and myself, since, the Innovation Forum has finally come to fruition. I think, Om sir has covered almost everything that any of us could think of in terms of collaboration opportunities and problems that startups could solve. But in our experience, and maybe I'll just take 15 seconds to tell you all what we're actually building at Caring. So we're building this two-way platform, right? It's an integrated technology platform where you have the analytics ecosystem on one side, which are companies that are building, artificial intelligence software or analytics tools or genomics tools, imaging tools, etc. And on the other side, you have the provider ecosystem that does not have the bandwidth to partner with 50 companies, one for each body part or one for each application. So we're trying to be the intermediary connecting layer that allows you to not only access and integrate, but also assess different types of AI solutions, right? And in our experience of working with almost 30, 35, deep science research groups, this includes startups, the GE Philipses of the world, NVIDIAs of the world, and then, the academic centers, Harvard, Stanford's, etc. We've seen that one crucial thing that differentiates a startup that will find early success and a startup that will, eventually find that success, but maybe after running through a few hoops, is that you pick the problem before you pick the technology, right? So this is a recurrent theme, right? It's not like people want to solve the problem of, let's say, tuberculosis and then go out and find, what are technologies that I can use to solve tuberculosis, right? It's generally the other way around, where and that's kind of the engineering mindset also, right? Where I have this amazing tool of deep learning, where can I use it, right? And that sets people on this journey of trying to force fit. Eventually people go through the hoops, and figure out use cases, and we have great examples of that. But that is one piece of advice. And also, as far as AI specifically is concerned, we've seen that people again don't follow the problem, but instead follow the data. Right. So to Om sir's point, data is extremely fragmented. Data is, we all think we have it, and we all think we have some kind of liquid gold in our servers. But the truth is that, none of it is structured. So what happens is that the solutions that start getting developed are on data that is easy to access and not necessarily the data that is most impactful. Right. And that then again, said, because every person in the world is building a chest X-ray algorithm today, right? Why is everyone building a chest X-ray algorithm? Because you can get access to 1 million chest X-rays with a single click from Stanford and Mass General Hospital, right? And you can start building AI. So that's the second point. The third and the final most important point is that you cannot build clinical solutions outside of a clinic, right? You cannot assume that your one visit to a doctor as a patient, as an N of one, will give you enough insight to be able to build a company out of that. And that's where the incubation centers and that's where forums like these are so powerful, right? Where literally we are saying कि यार आओ and हमारे ऑफिस में बैठो, right? और हमारे डॉक्टर के साथ बैठो, sit with us, see what it feels like to actually talk to a patient and type at the same time, or write with a pen or speak into a mic, and all of those fancy things, and experience it firsthand, and then go out and build that solution. So this is like a very maybe too impassioned plea, but build pick the problem first and then pick the technology, not the other way around. Don't force fit technology into problems. Well, at least that's my experience. Thanks.
8 points. So let me come back to Harshit now. Now you mentioned whether you raised very valid points around availability of data being one of the primary constraints that startups would face. So Harshit, if you are back, I would like to ask you if you would be willing to share anonymized data with some of the startups so that they can start building these applications around monetization of data and analytics around data. Obviously, it would be anonymized patient data or anonymized health data, but would you be okay to share that kind of data with some of the startups, obviously in a controlled environment?
Sure, Anurag. So I'll start off by saying that we did very early on realize that data is going to help us in many ways. and undertook the exercise of structuring our data within the organization. Until very recently, it was done for self-improvement within the organization, and also for certain clinical parameters to monitor and so on. Apollo follows quite stringent guidelines for its data. We follow the ISO 27001 like everyone does. We also take best practices from HIPAA, NIST, and GDPR. So we try to take best practices there, although we're not mandated to do so. Coming back to your specific question, we would love to be able to share our data in an anonymized way if it is purely used for research. If there is a commercial outlook to taking data from us, obviously, the organization would like to understand that better. We are in the process of formulating a data usage policy. We have a very active ethics committee that looks into all of this, but we do believe that this is something that will be done. Yes, the organization is quite receptive to that.
Great. That's very encouraging to hear. Let me ask Dr. Manchanda, right? So I think the consensus is that everybody is keen to support startups. Now, if we were to support startups, what kind of parameters do you have in mind, Dr. Manchanda, for shortlisting startups that you are going to support? And what is the approach that ideally some of the startups should be following so that you don't get spam, but obviously you get quality proposals from the industry?
So I think if I look at Vidor made a very interesting point, is that we certainly don't want to fall into a trap that I have a solution, now I have to look for a problem. I think the most important thing is I need to first know what the problem is, then I have to look for a solution. So it has to be other way around. And in the past, sort of a thing we have actually have done in sort of a ad hoc manner. We have picked up one process at a time. Let's say, for example, tracking of samples. And some startup has come to us saying that I can help you track the samples. I can help you track, let's say, where the logistics, the courier boy is. It actually makes my entire logistics operation a little more efficient. But then we found out that there's another startup which is working on some other area. Then we found ourselves in a position where we ended up working with lots of such startups. But it has its own downside because, data issues, information being shared to some of these small players. I think then we realized that we have to step back a bit and work with all of them in an integrated manner. So I think that's one of the learning, rather than cutting them into pieces and working with multiple startups. Our policy or strategy has been to work with a player actually who has sort of an understanding, and we actually want to grow with that startup. So certainly we don't want to work with multiple stakeholders or players. I would rather work with one or two of them and actually look at a long-term strategic partnership and seeing that startup grow with us as we go forward. For the sake of confidentiality, I can't share right now, but I think we are working with 2 or 3 such companies where the understanding is we are going to be walking this path together. And then they are also assured of that we are committed to their long-term growth. They are committed to us. And I think some of these areas of confidentiality, data privacy, some of these regulatory issues that are revolving around some of these technologies are taken care of. So the short answer for your question is we are willing to work with the startups, but with a very long term in mind rather than hit and run kind of situation.
Thank you. I think that makes perfect sense. So I think we have heard on the data side of it, we have heard a lot of comments and suggestions. But let me come back to the medtech industry and let me ask Meenakshi. We have seen a lot of market dynamics changing because of COVID-19. And a lot of medical device startups have emerged, right? So how do you see the co-innovation between these startups and the medical device companies? What are some of the areas where you feel this collaboration can really work out?
So Anurag, I think Ishika's slide captured those 2 buckets, which I thought really said it quite well. One was co-creation and the second is the scale up, right? So broadly, I think that's really the 2 buckets. But to get very specific, I think maybe I'll just give 2 examples. The first is one of the technologies that we are, very big and launching is OR integration, because what we find is operation theaters are often not linked to each other. And what has happened with COVID is that many of the expert doctors who could travel from urban cities to tier 3 towns and so on to train and assist are no longer now willing to travel. So we're seeing a lot of, OR integration where the OT is linked up to another OT in a different hospital in a different city, and the surgeon can guide on surgery. So this is potentially a fantastic technology, and we've got the technology and we will launch it. But with this technology comes some real data that's generated each time we do it. And we are not really focusing on that. So if there was a startup that could come with us and take on the data part of it while we work on the technology and the in surgery, because our ultimate purpose is to make sure that particular surgery goes seamlessly, right? We are not really thinking at that point about the data piece of it, but there's a lot of fantastic data generated each time we have these cross OT surgeries being done. So I think that's a very, specific example. Similarly, this is something we're also debating a lot. We've launched an orthopedic robot. It's a fantastic teaching tool. It captures the patient on a CT scan, then patient is in real life, and the whole thing can be a great teaching tool. But once again, we are focused a lot more on delivering the service in the OT, not so much on all the data that we generate. And of course, the data is not ours anyway, it's the hospital's data. So I think there are some very concrete examples where we can work with startups. But as Vidur was speaking, there's a little bit of a conundrum here, that if we are very clear what the problem is, then most of the time we can probably solve it. But the problem is companies like us are not always exactly specific about what the problem is. We have a vague idea, and then we need someone to jump in. But if they jump in with their technology to force fit that into our problem, it puts us off, right? So I think I'm not trying to solve the problem here, but that I think is a fundamental conundrum we're stuck in, that if we knew exactly what needs to be done, we can probably do it ourselves. Often we don't, but then we don't want to force fit technology. So how we solve that issue, I think, is still an open question. But it's really going to be in either of those two buckets: generate the idea with us and work with us hand in hand. And then second is, if there are some existing ideas that can be fit into our business, we can help very rapidly pilot and scale up. So I'd see those two buckets.
Great. I'm just conscious of the time, right? So let me ask one question to Vidur, and then we'll open it for audience questions. So Vidur, I think you saw Amit Mukim's presentation around NDHM and the impact it is going to create. And I'm sure you're working very closely with NDHM as well, right? So we saw digital payments getting revolutionized through the unified payments interface. And now NDHM is planning this unified health interface. So what kind of applications do you think startup can build with you and build in the ecosystem? Because what happened was government created the BHIM app in payments, and then the market opened up for compatible applications. So the same way we are going to see a lot of applications coming up in healthcare. So what are some of the examples that you have in mind or use cases that these startups can solve today?
So that NDHM is such a interesting topic that all of us, I'm sure, in one way or another, have some kind of fantasies related to how it could play out. But I think honestly, Anurag, and to all the entrepreneurs out there, it's a spectrum of impact that you can have through the NDHM framework, if I may, right? So there's the boring stuff, right? The boring stuff is also generally more impactful. So for example, I'm not sure how many people attending are aware, but the central government health scheme and the ECHS, which is the army like armed forces health scheme, are all moving on to NDHM, right, through NHA. And there is tremendous opportunity to automate a lot of the billing processes that are there. So till today, I'm all of our organizations have rooms filled with people who are just scanning documents and printing documents and then checking those documents and then scanning them again, and then there's one guy solving queries and all of that, and across multiple platforms. But now with NHA coming in on the backbone of NDHM, there's a tremendous opportunity to just not just do automation innovation, but also financial innovation, right? What if there was a quasi fintech startup that was to say that, I will take care of all your debtors as far as, the debtors on the NDHM framework. are concerned, I will take care of all of them. So I will pay you X amount of money on day 0. And then I go ahead, I recover, 1.1x or something like that after 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. That's innovation, right? And I'm sure most people in the country will sign up for that. But that's the boring part, right? Then we go to the clinical side of things. Right now, I'm a patient, I'm going across multiple hospitals. First I go to an Apollo hospital, I get a some kind of treatment or consultation or diagnostic test there. Then maybe I hop across to Max hospital. Now theoretically my data should flow with me through the NDHM so-called pipes, but somebody has to build those pipes, right? I don't think the government is actually building the data flow engines, right? They're building the frameworks, they're building the consenting mechanisms, they're building the app structures, but somebody has to set up the process to pull from here, send to there, so that the repeatability of consultation and diagnostics tests, etc., does not happen. So, and once you have that in line, then you start applying your AI, ML, decision support, etc., kind of things on top of that, because once you have the data going through your pipe, for lack of a better word, is only when you can start having those kind of impacts. So it's a very wide spectrum of innovation that is possible in NDHM, and I think anybody who wants to do anything in health tech should certainly follow the field, and both the exciting and the boring parts, not just the exciting parts.
Thanks, Sudhir. I think that was extremely insightful. So in the interest of time, I was just looking at the questions that we have from the audience. I think we have addressed most of these questions. So let me hand it over to the next panel now and switch over to the next session. Back to you, Julia.
Thank you, Mr. Anurag and the panelists. This was indeed a stimulating discussion with a number of key takeaways detailing out the areas where interventions are required. With this, we move on to the next panel we have for the day. Since our initiative involves collaboration between two ecosystems, it is crucial to understand the perspective and expectations of startups from this initiative as well. On that note, we move on to our second panel for the day, how startups want to engage. I would like to invite the moderator for this session, Mr. Naveen Raju, Executive Director of TiE Mumbai, to take the lead.
Thank you, Julia, and welcome everybody. Good evening. This has been a great exercise for all of us and really insightful talk from the previous panel, especially from the experts. And this is exactly what I think every startup in the country wants to listen and hear. On the format of this particular segment, we are not going to be doing this as a panel discussion. Rather, we're going to be demonstrating 5 interesting startups that fit your bill, especially if you are a NatHealth member, if you're a hospital, clinic, diagnostician, or a pharma company. Here are 5 startups who have done some very interesting products. They are either in early stage or growth stage. So like what most of you said, these are folks ready to actually grow with you. At TiE Mumbai, we basically try and build this co-creation, commercial, and digital bridge between the industry and startups. Now, without further ado, let me first call the renal project, Shashank. Shashank, if you're ready, I think I'll give you 7 minutes, Shashank, to present your, product and service and how you're basically working with certain hospitals currently.
Right. Thank you, Naveen. Thank you, TiE and NatHealth for giving this opportunity to present. How is it going to be? Do you want me to present, or someone from your team is going to do it?
So Shashank, either way, if you want to present, you can present.
I'll present.
Okay.
Can everybody hear me okay and see my screen okay?
We can hear you okay and see the screen as well, Shashank.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So we are the renal project, and we are the chain of dialysis microcenters that India needs. And our vision is to revolutionize the availability of this life-sustaining therapy of dialysis for kidney patients across India with our unique microcenter model. These are some of our facilities. We have around 21 facilities in the Mumbai, Pune, Thane, Nasik region already. And our team consists of myself. I am a biomedical engineer with 15 years of work experience in medical devices. And also I'm an expert in ISO 9001 and quality assurance. With me is my co-founder, CTO, who is an expert in artificial intelligence and machine learning. He's from Anna University and is developing a very interesting platform of dialysis management called Vidur. Mr. Vidun Maharjanji. And operations, we have Jitesh. Jitesh comes from a very humble background. He was a dialysis certified dialysis technician, but over 15 years and his experience with Kokilaben and other brand names, he has excelled in hospital management and dialysis care. So he handles my operations. So the problem is that there are numerous deaths happening each year due to kidney failure related diseases, and 2.5 lakh estimated new patients are added who need dialysis each year, and most of them are unserved. And 90% of the dialysis centers do not, they do not go beyond the tier 1 or tier 2 city limits. And so what India really needs is a dialysis facility that can penetrate into the corners of the country. The number one criteria which I saw when I was researching this in 2018 and 19, that what is the number one factor for dropping out of the dialysis or kidney care? And it was not the cost or affordability, but it was the proximity to actually get dialysis, because this is a therapy that is a lifelong recurring therapy and is needed every 3 days. So, and kidney transplant is a very small fraction which can actually relieve them from getting this dialysis therapy. So, which makes it into a $3.1 billion industry, and globally it is going to grow to more than 100 billion. However, this problem of having to go more than 100 kilometers, sometimes 150 kilometers every 3 days to go for dialysis therapy was such a big problem and is such a big problem in India. So we need to build a model that penetrates into this landscape of India, goes into the neighborhoods and the outskirts and the suburbs of tier 1, 2, and 3 city. And that is exactly what the Renal project is. It's a chain of dialysis microcenters. And how do we do this? We partner with those numerous 35 to 50 bed hospitals who have 200 square feet of place, water and electricity. And these are sometimes an orthopedic doctor having a nursing home and does not really, it's not his expertise into nephrology or kidney care. Also, dialysis has too many moving parts like the water quality, disinfection, preventive maintenance of the machines, which medico-legal and which makes it very convenient for them to just outsource it to a partner like the Renal project. So this, the 35 small bed nursing homes and the neighborhood hospitals, which lie on the outskirts of the city limits, is something that is untapped. And there are a lot of patients that can be potentially benefit from a kidney care facility over there. So this is currently where we are. We will soon be having 22 centers in the 18th month of inception. Our journey till date, we got incubated by the NITI Aayog government of the government of India. And I bootstrapped with 25 lakhs in 2019. We got funding from 100x, who saw that our low-cost capex-light model can recover very soon. And just within 4 months, we had enough cash to build one more dialysis center. And then within a few weeks, we had enough cash for another couple of centers. So they picked up on us. In August 2020, we raised another angel round. And now we will be looking into our next pre-Series A and Series A round of funding. So our journey so far has been 18 months, but we have very quickly become a very well-rated dialysis provider facility. We have a lot of very good standard operating procedures, and our patient care is something that someone, if you can visit one of our centers, we can showcase. And we are emerging as a trusted brand in kidney care in the community. So our differentiator from other players is, of course, the high penetration and the capex light model we have. A lot of the equipment we don't even purchase, we just lease it out. And as the center picks up, the lease is then becoming a very small amount for us to pay up. And the other one is Vidur. Vidur is our artificial intelligence and big data story. It stands for the virtual interface of the dialysis unit review. And this was something that, as Mr. Vidur Mahajan said, that you need to have a problem and then build a solution towards it. So when we were growing and we were having multiple dialysis centers, we just realized that, it has to be centrally monitored. The stock maintenance, the human resources, the patient, the dialysis scheduling, how the treatment is progressing for each patient, everything has to be centrally monitored. Otherwise, we will not have any control towards it. Not just that, but also each patient, as soon as he joins the renal project, and then throughout his lifetime, every 3 days is giving us immense amount of data, which cannot just lie over there. It needs to be organized and it has to be properly digitized. So this was the inspiration that we had to have a backbone of software that can manage this entire data. Also, as we progressed, we encountered more problems, like computer vision was necessary, telemedicine was necessary, and also Vidur gives an interface for the nephrologist, and the data is actually put to graphs and scales so that it can be consumed very conveniently by the nephrologist. Otherwise, the nephrologist, so far in a lot of the centers, he's going all the way on the outskirts and is flipping all the patient files. This cannot happen. If he can see the graph on his computer screen with, what are the pharmaceuticals given to him, what are the adverse events he's facing, he can remotely manage his patient without having to go over there each and every time just for data. Right? So there was this definite problem. In order to have this a huge network of micro centers, we would need an intelligent backbone of software and the technology to make it happen. And that's where Vidur was born.
30 seconds left.
Yeah. Our outlook is that we will be growing to 300 centers by 2023. We also have started home dialysis. In the wake of COVID, it picked up very well. It now accounts for more than 25% of our revenues. And our strategic partners and the enablers, really, we need a lot of strategic partners. We want corporates to give us problems, right? Give us problems so that, we know where the solution can be and how can we partner with you guys. The fields in which we really need strategic partnerships is pharmacy, pathology, facility and infrastructure, the technology, especially on the software and the digital data side, supply chain, equipment, awareness, spreading awareness and, co-branding, and also healthcare solutions. These are something that we really need help with. The partnerships and corporates have real problems. They have the experience with how things can go wrong. And we want to pick up on their experience and design solutions and use our capability towards them. So that's about the renal project, all I had.
Thank you, Shashank. And for any of the industry people who would like to get in touch with Shashank, please do ping us on the chat. We will directly get you in touch with Shashank. The next startup is Be Engage. I would like to call Mr. Tapesh. This is a very interesting company, and for most of the hospitals that are there, this is going to be useful. This is a post-discharge patient care and engagement platform. Tapesh?
Yeah. Thanks, Naveen. Thanks, NATHEALTH and TiE Mumbai to giving this opportunity. I will be probably more talking about what exactly we are doing, not much on the investment or finance side. A very brief about us. I am come from a technology background, and my co-founder is from the clinical side. Before starting WeEngage, I had earlier startup in radiology IT, where I think I worked almost 15 years, worked with many of the hospitals in the country and also in some of the markets like Malaysia, especially Indonesia. WeEngage is basically a problem which has been where we both founders faced it very closely. When someone in the family was not well and while recovering at home, there was numerous challenges. So we found ourselves in Singapore. We raised angel fund from some of the very successful tech entrepreneurs. And our technology is primarily on the natural language processing and basically building the conversations. So what problem we are solving, I think this is something everyone will relate to it. Once you get discharged from the hospital, there is a lot of, there's a significant time that the patients recover at home. And this is where there are multiple challenges can happen and there is not very active help from the hospital perspective. It is almost very, very difficult to reach out to your surgeons who did a surgery on you or some senior doctor because they are quite busy with handling the IP patients. Many a times this can lead to very unwanted outcomes, like we may miss some of the early warning signals and land into emergency. Many a times people are very over anxious. Specifically, you will find is the patient is not sharing the problems with the family member, thinking it may give a trouble. So there's a lot of, I would say it's a complex thing what happens to the patient at home. There are some countries who track this data very closely, especially in UK and US, where they see a significant number of readmissions, which can potentially, I'm not saying all of them, but potentially can be avoided if there is some kind of education connect with the hospital exist. Just to give you some perspective of that is some of the therapies like or some of the scenarios like chemotherapy. It's a very long treatment cycle. It is typically start from say 6 months. It can go up to 1 year. A patient have multiple sessions on chemotherapy, and every time a chemo is given, the body reacts in a very unpredictable fashion. So problem is the patient doesn't understand. They try to manage it at home, while many of the things have been seen very closely. I think there is a lot of work happening in the remote patient monitoring in terms of devices. But what we are trying to work on is not the device. There is a way to check SpO2 or temperature, but the idea is how to really put up a clear psychology behind it that people are aware about that they have to do it. So how do we do it? So when we started working on this problem, we said it's not a device problem. It is more about building a connect. Can someone call a patient every day and say, hey, you need to do this. Today is your exercise day, please don't miss it. Or I think you missed your exercise yesterday, you missed your medication yesterday, it is very important. So that's where we realized that a patient needs a human to talk to them, and understand their problems. The challenge is there are really no resources from the hospital perspective, and that's where we are building the kind of a, you can say, a virtual nurse, which can connect to the patients every day and understand them. If you look at our approaches, we are trying to be very, very human, close. It is not like, filling a form or just asking few things. It is really building the conversation which they feel are very relevant to them and very pointed to them. So there's a lot of, I would say, algorithm which run behind it to make it possible. What we found is we have started doing some early trials. We are relatively young. We just started 8 months back, but we have started doing multiple, some of the trials. To a bit surprise to us, I think WhatsApp is something people find it very, very convenient, because as a patient, you are on the WhatsApp. So if you have some kind of a conversation happening on the WhatsApp, so what we have built is like a virtual nurse talking to you in a very natural way. We also have a mobile app, which, as I said, we are still talking to the hospitals whether they like to integrate this whole engine to their app. And more important, we support multiple languages. We started with English, but now we have Kannada, Hindi, we are doing some work on the Tamil. So multiple languages are planned. Overall, it is about a very comprehensive health. It is not about just checking your temperature. It is about the system can even understand your query. So if you ask what the medicine should I take now, system will be able to answer it very accurately. So it's a view that we are just trying to create. It's just that you do not have a real human being, but someone who is closely looking at you. How it works in a hospital setup, overall, we plan to launch it from the hospital side, where hospital offer this, kind of a help or continuum of care to their patients. So there is a discharge summary. Most of the information is in 2-3 page of Word file. We take that discharge summary, and we have a lot of algorithms which actually understand the discharge summary and make a very personal, I would say, monitoring plan and talk to the patient every day. So that's how we do it. And whatever we are talking, it actually makes a data out of it and push it back to the hospital. So at the hospital side, they are able to see all the patients, how well they are doing. This is, I would say, I think as a startup, it's very important to, touch your customers. So we have started working with some of the hospitals. We, especially on the cardiology front, we are seeing a lot of interest. So we are working with a very large medical college. One of the hospital in Kerala deployed to manage their post-COVID complications. So that is still running. We are working with a very large pharma who liked our overall platform, and they want to deploy it in a pre-consult workup. And we have few deployments. I think outside India, we got certain good traction, and we have already started deploying there. At the end, yes, I think there has to be enough motivation for hospitals to look at it. So we see that eventually our overall vision is in the hospitals. Today, do not have a so-called very focused post, discharge care practices. So we want to really innovate into that, so that as a hospital, whenever the patient is discharged, that's become a kind of a practice, standard practice. That's where we are as a we engage. Thank you.
Thank you, Tapesh. That was useful. So for folks who would like to get in touch with Tapesh, please do drop in your questions and requests on the chat. We will kind of consolidate all of that and send it to them. We will, of course, take up questions after all the 5 startups have spoken. So, thank you. Next I have is Mera Doc. Mr. Sudhir Mathur will be presenting it. They do telemedicine access to a lot of homes. Mr. Mathur, are you there?
I'm here. Can you see me or hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, great.
Over to you.
I think just firstly, thank you to TiE and NATHEALTH for inviting us, especially at its inaugural session. It's been wonderful. I'm just putting up my presentation. It's been very, very deeply encouraging to hear everybody say, what they did. For some strange reason, I'm not able to. Okay. Here we go.
Yes.
And so I'd like to start by talking about trends that we saw and why we wanted to get into this business. Followed by, we have Dr. Vidur Mahajan on our board. So as he mentioned, I will talk about the problem that we were trying to solve and what is Mera Doc going to do about it. I think we felt that a lot had been happening on the entire healthcare side, but it was in bits and pieces across the world. India was playing a huge role in it, but it was in a lot of silos, and it's taken a devastating virus to, and we believe this evolution is going to turn into a raging revolution. We heard, even Deepak talk about it, that it's just going to, explode as people, become more and more aware about what. So, we clearly saw over the last couple of years that the government infrastructure and technology, there's a fight for capital at the government level, and it's, clearly inadequate, to provide the care that is possibly required to the entire society as a whole. COVID brought about a heightened awareness and access to healthcare, something we have never seen before. We believe it's going to be very, very explosive. and philanthropic and private capital both. Again, what something Deepak spoke about is finding its way in very large quantums to help support this change in this thing. So, and I think what we saw, which was amazing change in human behavior that a couple of panelists talked about, was change in consumer behavior or patient behavior. But one size doesn't fit all. Everybody wants a unique, personalized service that's available to them, and it was clearly not available. So moving ahead, I know Deepak spoke about lots of trends in the space. A lot of numbers, but clearly India is ready for the digital health revolution. We've seen the size is going to be explosive. The penetration of the digital footprint in India is huge. Our ability to consume data is huge. It might have been going into movies, etc. But the familiarity of using data is just huge. So it eases the way. Yes, language can be a barrier, but there are ways to adopt that, to change that through voice, etc. We expect the market. I mean, this is supported by a lot of research that that has been done in India to be explosive. And each startup. I mean, this is the overall industry growth, but startups can have a much greater. We are seeing huge changes in the e-pharmacy, the teleconsultation, pathology, radiology, everywhere in this whole thing. So I'm going to skip over this. I think what we saw as issues, there are multiple aggregators with very different packages. There are no uniform healthcare packages, unknown labs, huge positive change. But as Dr. Manchanda also says, how do you work with this data that's coming all around? We saw change in pharmacy, multiple layers, each pharmacy offering their own to start with, then creating into fulfillment centers, subscription models, 3 days, 4 days to delivery, which is fine for vitamins or something which you eat regularly. But if you want something right now, it's not available. Highly discounted models. Now, I don't know whether we don't know whether that's really sustainable or not over a period of time. And in healthcare is slightly different than most of the e-commerce. You want to provide a sustainable cost model. Huge change in artificial intelligence. I think everybody's spoken about it, so I'm going to skip this part. Numerous players offering doctor consultations, scheduling appointments, but the connect with the patient, the follow-through is missing. We just heard Tapesh talk about it. The follow-through was really missing. So, just to look at what the issue in front of us is really that, while the system has undergone massive changes, they are still siloed, complex, and the patient is, as it is discomforted, and to deal with multiple systems needs to be improved considerably. So we believe that, from the doctor being at the centerpiece, just the doctor itself, there is a care team that is entirely required. And, with the patient as a centerpiece and a final decision maker, how they want to do it. This, we believe, will certainly improve the outcomes for patients. The patient feedback is going to be critical. And just as in every business, a satisfied customer will be a more engaged person to continue right through the life cycle of an episode or the entire life of wellness. So what is Meradoc all about? We are in the process of setting it up. Let me say that what we have at the moment is we've built a great team of GPs, and we are engaging with some very senior GPs to have online. So what it's a very GP-centric model. And we are using our AI to empower both the patient and the general physician to really improve the clinical outcomes, reducing the patient burden, to have to deal with different sub-ecosystems, ease in decision making, go to just one system, which is a general, revive the old GP practice, which is a family doctor. And we believe, as Dr. Mahajan also talked about, there is infrastructure in the country, but it is not, even in a crisis, it could not be optimally utilized. So optimal utilization will definitely bend the cost curve for everybody and improve profitability in the value chain. So, coming back to, so we want the GP to be the front at the patient's care team and navigate the whole system. I mean, certainly it will provide access to, clearly the specialists, to the medical facilities. I'll come to that. So what we believe is the life cycle health manager. That's what we want to be providing. Somebody who can be called up at any time of the day or night. Maybe not the same doctor 24 hours, but the system will be the GP. The EHR management systems, which integrate pathology, radiology, whatever it is, to be able to provide that and a suitable treatment plan and a follow-through plan. So integration of these clinical subsystems is going to be at the core and empowering the GP to take decisions along with the specialists whenever required. So I've given an example. You could consult a cardiologist in one hotel, follow through with another one, if that's what you really want to do for a double opinion, or to different hospitals if you want different opinions, but come back to the GP and take their decision making. So this is how our model is going to be working at. So our doctors are going to be in-house, our GPs are going to be in-house, guided by very advanced AI tools, which will help integrate the entire data that's available or created with the patient over the life cycle. And we would provide every service integrated. I mean, this is an aggregated model. We would not be doing this on our own, but the key is to, as in a forum like this, to find partners who would provide us this on a very, very sustainable commercial model, which is going to be a commercial model as well as value systems that is transparent across the board from the patient right down to to our partner.
Mr. Mathur,
yeah,
just 30 seconds left.
Yeah, sure. I'm just going to skip to the last slide, and the screen is not moving. But okay, so I'm going to conclude with that to say, back to what this thing is: a GP-centric model and a patient-centric model, but providing access to everybody seamlessly across the board, not just to the individual, but to the family. We believe that the DNA of an individual, the family, as well as community around disease spreads or illness is spread on account of either DNA or where a person lives, and to combine the two through artificial intelligence and improve decision making. So thanks a lot for that. So we will be, thanks a lot, TiE. We would be reaching out, and I hope some of the people who are listening on this reach out to us to make this a sustainable model for society. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mathur. So folks, if you have any questions for Mr. Mathur, please do put them on the chat. And I'm requesting all the startups to also start answering, because I think we're going to be stretching the time. Next we have is Cancer RX. Manisha is there, and she's going to be presenting her startup. This is a platform that provides DSS for oncology. So Manisha, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Naveen. Hi, everyone. Am I audible? Is my screen moving? Just doing a few checks.
Yeah, you're audible. The screen is stagnant at the moment.
Okay, all right. Does it move now, Naveen?
No.
No?
No.
Sorry, is it moving now?
No.
Can Tripti take over?
Yeah.
Sure, just give me a second.
So Manisha, stop sharing your screen.
Sure, I'll do that.
Is it visible?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Just give me a second.
Manisha, in the meantime, you can start introducing yourself.
Okay, all right. So I run CancerX. At CancerX, we've working on clinical decision support for oncology, essentially solving challenges in cancer care using technology one by one. We are an AI, ML, deep learning model, and we help clinicians make better, more judicious treatment decisions. An analogous example would be Google Maps for oncology. For example, a Google map tells you to go treatment path A, path B, path C from, for example, from place A to place B. But similarly, our algorithms help clinicians, oncologists with treatment paths A, B, C based on patient and disease profile. So that's where we are. Apologies for the glitch. Tripti, can you move on to the next one, please? So our mission is to help patients at the grassroots level with access to best practices in cancer care. And we want to improve prognosis and outcomes in a sector which is generally besieged with suboptimal outcomes. The next one, Tripti. Yeah. No, the previous one, please. The one after this. Yeah. So what do? We are building a bunch of algorithms which help care providers with clinical intelligence, shorten the lead time from diagnosis to treatment. Our algorithms are cloud-based with super fast turnaround time of just a few seconds. We help digitize care provider workflows, help doctors with real-time intelligence. Our software is enterprise grade, which helps physicians make the right decisions at the right time. So essentially what we're doing is we're helping care providers get work done, transforming how work gets done at the provider level. The next one, Tripti. So we're trying to tackle some of the toughest challenges in healthcare. First is the super low doctor to patient ratio. Clinicians are burnt out. The number of oncologists to the number of patients is really, really low. There's high workload, treatment delays. Even when doctors want to do justice, they're not able to do that. This problem has been compounded by the disruption that we faced because of COVID. So COVID has disrupted the entire spectrum from diagnosis to ongoing care. Hospitals really haven't been equipped, to offer an online experience, essentially because it was so sudden. The patient attrition rate is very, very high. In a place like Gurgaon, where I live, a patient would go to one hospital and probably visit the 7, 8, 9 peripheral hospitals. So what is an impact? Revenues at the hospital level. Hospitals typically find new patient acquisition a challenge. There are outreach camps, OPDs, patient sourcing camps that are conducted. But how much of the revenue comes in from there, nobody knows. Being a capex heavy business, hospitals are under tremendous financial stress. The next one, Tripti. So our solutions are for clinics, hospitals, care providers. The first solution that we have is Summarize. Summarize, as the name suggests, is summarization of key parameters based on the patient and disease profile. Now, what Summarize does is, if you go to a hospital, in a typical cancer consultation, you would have a 45 to 50-minute consult in which either a junior doctor or the senior doctor himself will be sitting and jotting down parameters. So that takes about typically 20 to 25 minutes. Now, with Summarize, we are able to give you a concise summary in just about a few seconds. You get a summary which you get in about a few seconds. You can review that over 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So what happens is that the consultation time gets shortened from a 45 to 50 minutes to maybe a 10-15 minutes, allowing you to see more patients in that time. The second product that we have is CDS, as the name suggests, clinical decision support, that suggests treatment paths based on the patient and the disease profile. The next one, Tripti. So how the algorithm works is that, you can upload the reports, the algorithm will read the reports, clinical decision support will suggest treatment protocols. These can be reviewed by the doctors. There's an option of adding clinical notes, making modifications, and then these can be further shared ahead with either patients or caregivers or, referring peers from peripheral centers. And there's an option of, care continuum within the facility itself. The next one, Tripti. So, as we worked across, we realized that, at the grassroots levels, the EMR facility is not there. And even if it is there, doctors do not know how to use it, or hospitals themselves are not able to use it. So the process flow is very simple. The doctor can sign in, register using his email ID. The patient also gets a unique identification number based on his profile. You upload reports. You have an option of either choosing Summarize or CDS or Summarize plus CDS. Now, based on what you choose, you get an output. You can review that. And for returning patients, you get the treatment history. The next one, Tripti. So this is what some of our protocols look like. This is for breast cancer. One is for triple negative and one is for an advanced breast cancer. The next one, Tripti. So what we're trying to do is, beyond digitizing workflows, we're also trying to help care providers reorganize care administration during the current pandemic and endemic times. So diagnosis, if the patient reports get uploaded, which the patient themselves can upload on a private URL, the doctors get a concise summary and are able to advise treatment options online. So what this means is that patients really don't need to visit hospitals, increasing exposure to themselves and also for the hospital staff, doctors, nursing. So most patients, who come to visit hospitals for cancer care, especially, are the ones who need supportive care. They really don't need care administration. So we have a repository of supportive care protocols. Now, based on the disease and the patient profile, you can advise, suggest supportive care protocols online. So this also helps with OPD management. So what happens is that instead of every patient walking into a doctor's clinic waiting 2 hours, waiting outside for 2 hours, what this does is that only patients who need chemotherapy or immunotherapy administration come to the hospital. It reduces in-person visits, reduces time waiting for patients to wait outside the doctor's clinic, and reduces the in-person consultation time with the doctor that you spend with the doctor itself. Then, peer-to-peer case discussions happen. You could have peripheral centers, peripheral center doctors can sort of refer to you, help you with better diagnosis. And there is remote collaboration opportunities that sort of happen. Then you have, clinical trials. Clinicians can also advise clinical trials online. Most importantly, what a solution does is help with standardization. Standardization across a corporate chain. Now there are HCGs and there are Manipals and there are Fortises and there are Macs, but every doctor is, dancing to his own rhythm, singing to his own tune. Is there really standardization of care protocols even within facilities? Probably no. So what we do is, we give the hospitals an API structure, which we give the hospitals a skeleton structure. They can use the structure and at least standardized care facilities within their own institutions. The other use case that it helps with is, peripheral centers. For example, you have a name that you've got peripheral centers, or you are a facility in Gurgaon and you've got peripheral centers in Gurgaon, Rewari, nearby areas. You can actually standardize the entire care protocol spectrum through the peripheral centers. The next one, Tripti. So this is our product profile. We are 369 times faster. We did a pilot, and the pilot showed us that, the piloting hospital is a 100-bedded hospital, and, they had a 69% increase in patient retention, 32% increase in revenues. We also have, update clinical guidelines often so that doctors who are overburdened and not able to keep up, the pace at which technology is changing and new molecules are coming in, are able to keep up with that. Integration is simple. You don't need any high-tech technology upgrades. You're just able to start working using your email ID, mobile number. And in case APIs are required, we are there. So what we do is essentially connect the ecosystem, offer remote care collaboration opportunities, virtual easy access, a B2B grid to corporate hospitals so that the peripheral centers benefit by the best care and hospitals also benefit by way of inflow of patients. We are available 24/7, no breaks in between. The next one, Tripti. So the value proposition, as I said earlier, extends across the spectrum. So for patients, it's data-backed expert opinions, best practices. For doctors, it's easy e-prescription, which reduces, load on them, improves their efficiency, productivity by 50%, addresses and solves the problem of a super low patient to doctor ratio, helps institutes bring in transparency, reliability, helps with better clinical outcomes, not just for patients, but also for doctors as well as institutes, helps with clinical governance. The next one, Tripti.
Manisha, 30 seconds left.
Yeah, sure. So as we deploy, I think we should be able to impact at least 75% of reported incidents in India. The next one, Tripti. So the ask is, opportunities for deployment. Can we deploy ourselves with Ayushman Bharat for a low-cost data-driven program? Can we deploy ourselves with AIMS, district hospitals, state hospitals, some of the private sector hospitals who are a part of NATHEALTH? So thank you. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much, NATHEALTH, TiE, for giving us the opportunity to present. We look forward to hearing from stakeholders.
Thank you, Manisha. And Manisha, you've got a couple of questions which people have pinned you on the...
Sure, I'll take a look at that.
Please do start
respond. Yeah.
We are going to stretch time, so I think you can start interacting with your fellow audience.
I'll do that. Thank you so much, Naveen, once again.
Thank you. So the last startup we have is Binox, and could I request Dr. Gul to come and share his vision and views? No pun intended.
Thank you, Naveen. Thank you, TiE, and thank you, NatHealth, for giving me this opportunity to present my program today on Binox. I just want to make sure that my screen is available.
It is, Doctor.
All right. I probably am the only medico in this August gathering, and so my talk is going to be a little more medical than technical or financial. But I'll try and my best to make this medical subject as simple as possible. What I have here is a Binox, which is a cloud-based software, which is used for managing computer vision syndrome and amblyopia. As we go ahead, I will be talking more about what this means. Just to start with a short video. So as we note in these pandemic times, the whole culture of living has changed. And we have new norms like work from home, virtual classrooms for children, virtual meetings like what we're having today, and everything has become digital. More and more of us are all the time in front of a computer screen or mobile phones. And what is the main concern that bothers people about working so long on computers or mobile phones? Is nothing but the eyesight and the vision. We ophthalmologists across the globe are getting frequent calls from panicked parents, from people, having to ask questions about, will this work on computers for hours, 7 hours, 8 hours? Will it anyway affect my eyes? Well, I just try to simplify this. The computer work does cause some effect on the eyes, and this is called as computer vision syndrome. Computer vision syndrome is a gamut of symptoms that one can have while working long hours on computers. Somebody can be suffering from eye strain, itchy eyes, headaches, blurred vision, or double vision. To put some figures in perspective, we have around 56 million people in India who use computers on a regular basis. The figures are much higher, maybe around 500 million when you when you count all digital media like laptops or mobile phones. And the statistics say that 70 to 80% of people who work for more than 3 to 4 hours in front of a computer screen are likely to suffer from a computer vision syndrome. And what do we as clinicians do when we get patients who come to us with these kind of symptoms? And most of us give them some moisturizing eye drops. We give them some prescription glasses, ask them to have some anti-glare coating, make some postural arrangements, and maybe the new trend is to give some blue filter glasses. But do these actually work? Well, these methods provide some relief, but they really do not address the root cause. To put things into perspective, our eyes actually work like an autofocus camera. And this focusing of the eyes is done by the lens of the eye. The lens is controlled by muscles within the eyes. These muscles actually have to work a lot because there is a constant focusing and defocusing. And this constant focusing, defocusing causes a asthenopia or eye strain on the eyes because of the sheer fatigue of these muscles. And nowhere in the world can any medicine or anything else can do it to strengthen these muscles. There's only one formula for that, and that is exercise. And we at Binox have a product which actually takes care of the exercise program. I will be talking about it as we go ahead. But let me also talk about the second product that we have in Binox, and that's about the treatment of amblyopia or lazy eye. Again, it's a very medical terminology, but just to make it very simple, amblyopia or lazy eye is a condition where the eye functionally or organically looks very good and absolutely normal, but the brain is not able to interpret the image coming from the eye. It affects around 2 to 4% of the population, and the world amblyopia market is valued at around $4 billion. Again, the traditional method of treating amblyopia has been something called as penalization, where we as doctors, we actually cover the better eye. The idea behind that being that once the better eye is covered, the brain actually is forced to see with the lazy eye, and that's how the vision improves. But this treatment is far from perfect. Most children, I mean, the amblyopia, the disease actually starts from childhood. And this starts to get a very negative impact on children who have to wear these patches to go to school. They don't just hate it. Most of them leave it halfway. And many a times we have seen that once we stop this patching, the disease actually comes back. And anybody above the age of 9, this treatment is absolutely futile, and we do not advocate this treatment. In other words, anybody above the age of 9 coming to us with lazy eye, we offer no solution for that person. Besides that, the treatment is long drawn. The patching protocol involves 6 hours of patching every day for close to around 1 or 2 years. What we have in Binox is a program of Amblygo, where this is again a like we said, there's a cloud-based software program based on the principle of dichoptic therapy. Here, what we have done, we have made games which are very engaging, games which are very interesting to play. The child or even the adults, what they do is they just wear some special glasses, sit in front of the computer screen, and play these games with both their eyes open. So it is a binocular treatment. The treatment is revolutionary in a way that it gives excellent results in about 6 weeks as compared to 2 years of patching. We've done around 1,000 patients of amblyopia treatment, and we've got around more than 90% success rate. And like I said, that this is how it works even in adults. The way we work in Binox, both for CVS and for lazy eye, is that we want a clinical examination to be done by the doctor, by maybe an ophthalmologist or an optometrist. And once the diagnosis is done, the right patient is selected. The patient is enrolled for the Binox program. Patient connects on our central helpline number. And once the patient connects, we explain to the patient what is to be done. And the whole session, whole treatment is done remotely on a platform like Zoom or Microsoft Teams. The entire 10 sessions are required for a treatment of CVS, computer vision syndrome, and around 30 sessions are required for the treatment of amblyopia. All the treatment sessions are done totally on a remote setting. We've done treatment for patients across the globe, sitting right here in Mumbai. We've treated patients as far as Latin America. And once we are satisfied with the level of treatment that we've achieved, or the goal that we've achieved, we send the patient back to the doctor for a reassessment and for their inputs on this.
30 seconds, doctor.
So this is one of its kind software for comprehensive management. It is hardware agnostic. Only thing that you require the computer and internet connectivity. Is very easy to use, and we do it ourselves. We've got some good awards in the international forum. We got the 2nd prize at the American Society of Cataract and Refractive Surgery, and we've got a winner at the NASCOM last year. We have a global presence. We have around 475 centers in the world. You're using Binox. More than 4,000 patients have already been treated. This is our structure. We have this is my team of founders, which is a mix of clinicians and tech entrepreneurs, our international business partners, and a very highly luminary medical advisory board consisting of the best and the biggest ophthalmologists across the world. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, doctor. That was really useful. So folks, in the interest of time, I don't think I'll be able to do a Q&A, but however, please do send us your questions. I would request all the 5 startups to come on the screen, and please do type in your contact addresses in the chat and Q&A section so that people can directly get in touch with you all. And having said that, I'd like to thank NATHEALTH and IQVIA for making this happen. We as TiE would work diligently in trying to curate startups and provide the healthcare industry all the problem statements answers. And I think we look forward to the long association with NATHEALTH and truly accelerating the Indian healthcare industry. Having said that, thank you all. Over to you, Julia.
Thank you, Mr. Naveen and all the founders. That was a brilliant session that has given us a flavor of the next wave of health tech startups and how they are willing to work with the healthcare industry. With this, we are about to bring the webinar to a closure. This event has brought together industry and startup leaders, key stakeholders in the innovation process, to lay out their expectations and to help chart a way forward for this initiative. However, as we know, this is only a curtain raiser and a taste of what is to come. I would now like to request Mr. Siddharth Bhattacharya, Secretary General at NATHEALTH, to come on screen for concluding remarks and vote of thanks.
Thank you, Julia. It's an honor to be addressing this very lively audience today. When NATHEALTH and TiE Mumbai started bringing this forum together, the overriding principles were how do we create a platform where innovations can be tested, innovation can be seeded, innovations could be prototyped. And hopefully through this, the discussions that took place today, we have come up with many ideas on how to create pathways for scale. This is just a beginning for a longer series where we will be having these sessions in increasing frequencies. And hopefully the idea is to co-create a program with the different stakeholders together with NATHEALTH and TiE Mumbai and other ecosystem partners, really facilitating this drive. I think the objectives, what we are looking for, and this came out very clearly today in the conversations, there's clearly, first of all, a commercial opportunity, both for the startup ecosystem as well as for the industry. It's a win-win on both sides to be able to engage in this conversation. Secondly, I think it's very important to bring the engagement model between startup and the industry, which is continuous, where testing, prototyping, co-creating ideas, they can really, bloom in a very conducive environment. And third aspect is the investment angle. Much of the industry also has their corporate VCs, all the captive investment arms, and there may be opportunities to jointly, look at, ideas, partnerships, and create new market access opportunities and new product propositions and value propositions. With those words, I would like to sincerely thank, first of all, the entire audience who have taken this time on a Friday evening. We had over 400 registrations, so thanks to each and one of you. My special thanks to the chief guest, Mr. Deepak Bagla. He has laid out some very, very interesting thoughts, and hopefully Invest India is going to be integral and an integral partner to whichever way we proceed from here. Dr. Ajay Agarwal from NHA could not join us today, but we would like to thank him. The NHA is going to be an integral partner, and they have a clear mission for affordable innovations and partnerships with the private sector. Sincere thanks to Dr. Harsh Mahajan, President of NATHEALTH, Mr. Amit Mukim, both the NATHEALTH Innovation Forum leader as well as President TiE Mumbai, Mr. Harshat Reddy from Apollo, Dr. Om Manchanda from Dr. Lal Path Labs, Ms. Meenakshi Navatia from Striker India, Dr. Vidur Mahajan from Caring. We would like to also thank all the startups, Dr. Gul Nankani, Ms. Manisha Soin, Mr. Shashank Modla, Mr. Sudhir Mathur, and Mr. Tapesh Agarwal for the roundtable discussions, which were facilitated by, we had both Mr. Naveen Raju, who facilitated these conversations, and Mr. Anurag Saxena. I would also like to thank Ms. Ishika Arora, who interned with NATHEALTH, really spoke to many of the industry leaders, the startups who were present today, and many more. We will be circulating the report she has put together, which will also guide our thinking in the road ahead. I would just like to say at the end, I would like to thank my team from Secretariat, NatHealth Secretariat, Ms. Brinda Chaturvedi, Ms. Anesha Pandey, and as well as Anugraha William, along with the entire team from Avian and Julia for really conducting this event very smoothly. With those words, we will be circulating to all of you the recording of this session, as well as the report that Ishika has put together and the presentations that were made here today. We look forward to continuing this discussion very soon. Those words would like to wish everyone a very safe and a enjoyable weekend. Until we connect again, have a good day ahead. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Siddhartha. Once again, thank you for joining us today and making this event a resounding success. Our team will be in touch with you all to share an update on this event. If you have any further questions, please write to us at the emails displayed on the screen. Thank you and wishing you all a safe and restful weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you all.